Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Cinebounds Live. Okay, I've got Sam here. We've done a couple of shows and we've talked about websites. We've talked about SEO. We've talked about content. Today, we're going to talk about what Sam really specializes in and something that I think he particularly enjoys doing, which is probably why he specialized in it. It's around photography websites. I believe in a niche, right?
Yeah.
But that is quite niche. So first off, I mean, because you've got the photography websites, you've got Sam Hollis website design,
yeah.
And then the photography side of it is a completely different,
different brand,
different arm.
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
He was thinking about niching, thinking about who I could work with, thinking about who we'd worked with before and who'd be interesting to work with, and I knew a little bit about, and that all came together eventually with photographers. So yeah, it's something that I've always done as a hobby. It's something actually my dad was a professional photographer, so my first job, 13, 14 years old, was put on a suit and tie and carry around all his stuff.
Yeah, we all need a gopher.
And eventually I got to do the casual shots, so he was there with a big, in those days, film camera while I was sort of snapping away the casual shots. So I kind of got a little bit of an insight in photography. It's something I've always been interested in. And yeah, kind of developed from there, and working with the Sam Hollis web design, we worked with a few photographers. And I could see that the photographers a lot of the time could do with some help on the websites. That the photography side is usually 98% of the time the photographs on the photographer site is amazing. The written side can often need some help.
That's a very diplomatic way of saying it, right?
It depends. There are some photographers that have got their marketing nailed, and you can just see, and it's absolutely stunning, and they know what they're doing. But there's an awful lot put their pictures on there and aren't quite sure what else to do.
Yeah, and it is so important, because a picture does tell 1,000 words, but you still need some content.
That's it. What I like to talk about sometimes is the wedding photo. You've got a brilliant wedding photo, and yes, it looks amazing, but actually, unless you tell people, they don't know how much time you spent with the bride even before the wedding. How many days did you spend talking to them, planning with them, or did you just turn up and wing it? And you can tell a little bit from the photo, but not as much as if you actually talk people through.
Yeah, that's I think that's really important. So how do you work with this as a like, where do you start? I mean, you're right that the content is there, so you'll obviously start work with the photographer, speak to them, talk to them, develop what it is that they're trying to get. They're obviously, so photographer's niche as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the point, and I think that's where I'm going with this, because so many people go, oh, you're a photographer, will you do my wedding? It's like, well, no, I'm a product photographer, and I think you need to have that kind of education with people of the difference between I'm a photographer and I'm a photographer. And there are certain differences, different skill sets.
Yeah, definitely. And they specialize in different things, and that definitely needs to come across right away in the website. Because in some ways, if you're a photographer that specializes in pets, then you want to get rid of the people at weddings and get rid of the people that want a headshot and stuff. So your website really say what it is you're doing right away and make that very clear.
And what about a photographer that kind of is a bit more generic? So they'll do the weddings as well as do the corporate shots.
So there's always a balance there. I talk to lots of photographers, because lots of them do that, especially like a lot of us in business. They start out and want to do everything and then kind of specialize and get a few areas, but often they still have a corporate side and maybe a family portrait side or something. And there's a balance between, do you do it all on one website or have separate websites? And obviously there's a cost, but you can do it on the same website. I think one of the things is just being very direct to the front of your website, almost going, family, corporate, which do you want? And just get people to the right part as soon as possible.
And that's not that hard to do, right?
No.
And it's a hell of a lot more cost effective, I think, than running 2 or 3 different websites.
I mean, it depends how big each business is. If the business becomes more than you and you've got a few people, then probably it's time to hive them off. If it's you doing a few things, you can probably keep it as one and keep those different areas in there.
And so, like, where's your, I mean, obviously we figured out where your passion is when it comes to this, and there is a definitive passion. added benefits can a photographer? So for photographers listening, right, what is the benefit of coming to you over going to any other web developer?
Well, we work a lot with photographers, so we know what photographers are looking for. We know a lot about them finding their customers. We know a lot about how to put across their work in the right way to get that balance between the excellent work, but telling the story behind it too. So getting that balance with the professionally written content, getting the pictures across, and getting across the service they bring, the story that goes with that.
And then the brand that sits behind it. And it's funny actually, right? So I always like bright colored websites until I look at photography websites. And then I think a darker background actually suits really well.
Yeah, it can work nicely. Yeah, a black background website can work nearly nicely. A white can as well, in that kind of gallery, in that kind of, white gallery look.
Yeah.
With some nice space. But it is one of those ones where the darker websites.
The darker color looks. And I mean, you've worked with, you literally work with developers around the world, right? Like you're not just based on one specific thing. You've literally worked with clients all over the world now.
Mainly UK. So most of my clients are UK based. We've got the odd one elsewhere, but you pretty much a UK based company. Is there
a reason for that, or because you can work all over?
I can work all over the world. We started in the UK. The business has developed in the UK. We're known in the UK. If we wanted to go elsewhere, we'd have to do a lot of, a big change in the marketing. So it's largely about where we're already known, growing that marketing. And yet the UK is where we're known, where we can grow easily.
Because I suppose, which is where I was going with this, is photographers a lot more geographic.
They're very geographic, which means in terms of SEO, which we talked about in the last show, actually it's quite interesting. So for a lot of businesses, if you're looking at the SEO, you often have some very big businesses that might be regional or national that you're competing with that make it quite hard to get ranked in Google.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a photographer, you just have to do that bit better than those other local photographers. It's, it's not simple, but it's easier than if you've got, a national brand you're trying to compete with that's just, going to push you out the water. If you've got a B&B, you can't compete with Airbnb in terms of turning up on Google. Well, if you've got a photography business, you're just competing against those other local photography businesses.
Yeah, and I think it's these little things, and I often hope that people that are watching these shows, these are the golden nuggets that they take out. And this is why you use a specialist, right? This is why you go to someone who knows what they're talking about, that knowledge. Because some people build your website and they will use the exact same process as they do with every other website that they build, and then wonder then why they're not getting the results.
Yeah.
Where with you have that local knowledge, or that more, I'm not sure what the word to use, but you have the knowledge to know, right, okay, well, you need to be approaching it from a different angle. You don't need to compete with, Kodak. Right, you just need to compete with. It's like that old saying, you don't need to outrun the lion. You just need to be faster than the other person outrunning the lion.
Yeah,
and you've won, right? And it's the same when you're looking at web development. It's like you don't have to compete with the big national companies. You just got to compete with the local people within your area. And if you can do that, then you'll be halfway there to the winning.
That's it. And because the search is a lot on photographers, so because for a lot of businesses, network and photographers who networking, all sorts of things are good. But if we're honest, a lot of people, especially for the family side and the wedding side, the first thing they're going to do is Google, isn't it? And do a search.
So what about blog content? I mean, blogs are so important on a website, right? But what is a photographer blog about?
So sometimes we suggest instead of a blog, they kind of do a portfolio. But instead of it's just, here's my last wedding, here's a dump of photos, it's the story of that wedding. It's the talking to them beforehand, how much planning went into it, the whole story of what happened. That can be really good. Blogs about venues can be really great in terms of local SEO. So a really good way to kind of build your SEO locally. Yeah, wedding venues where you've done a photo talk of weddings, talk about that venue. You can do, loads of blogs there. You've certainly got a whole load of ideas for your blogs that I think to think too hard. But portfolios I think are just great, so people can see, especially if you've done, so if you're wedding photographer, different types of wedding, or if you work with businesses and loads of different types of businesses. So somebody visiting your site can find somebody like them and go, look, somebody like me, has worked with you already, I can see how that's going to work for me.
Yeah, that, you know what, that's an incredible tip, actually, because I wouldn't have thought of that. I mean, like, I've often sat down and gone, oh, what does a photographer blog about? Because they've got all these amazing photos, but they've got no real
and the key is don't blog about photography, the technical side and stuff, unless your business is training other photographers, in which case great. But I think a lot of the mistake quite a few photographers make, and on Instagram actually, is a lot of their content is about the photography itself and the lenses, and the only people you're going to attract with that is other photographers.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're training photography is great, but if you want to do portraits, that's not relevant.
Again, another top tip, and you get that for free, right? So Sam, look, let's, if we got a photographer on the watching the show now, what would be your top tip to that individual as to why they would want to work with you individually?
We work with photographers a lot, so we know the kind of customers you're looking for. We know what the customers themselves are looking for, and so we can get across both sides, along with working with the images to make sure that it works for the visitors. The visitors see what you can offer, get what they want, and get in touch with you.
Fantastic. And there's no better top tip than that, right? So Sam, it's been great having you here. It's been great chatting about this subject. I love niche subjects anyway. I always have done. And I do think that if you're going to do something right. And so until next time, thank you so much. I hope you've really enjoyed having Sam around as much as I do. If you haven't watched his previous shows, please do so. Some real top tips on there. So Sam, thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you again.